Hey, folks, welcome back. It's your favorite water cooler friend from the office, the movie chatter-upper guy, Dave the Klone. Thank you for stopping by. I think I'll start off by talking for about 3 minutes about stuff apparently, according to one commenter, people don't care about. But while we're doing that, since you're here and you know why you're here, you know how you got here, and you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead, make sure you click the like and the subscribe button so you never miss out on any of the awesome stuff, but you'll only not miss out if you also smash, like Hulk, smash the bell icon too, because it's not good enough to just do the first two, you gotta do all three. That's the game now, man. We're in the land of algorithms, so far removed from the movie we're going to be talking about today, tonight, whatever time it happens to be when you're listening to this. It's actually dark out as I'm recording this, and I'm looking out the window just to make sure I don't see a pair of glowing eyes or maybe a neighbor about to bite a chick on the neck because, you know, they're a vampire. That's right. Oh my. Oh hell yes. I'm about to become a teenage neighbor obsessed. We are talking about 1985's Fright Night. Yeah, there's no way I could actually get that right. But man, you know what? It's so cool that there was a sort of predecessor to what Tales from the Crypt became from my generation. Apparently this was a real thing. I don't know if it was. I never saw any episodes myself, but you sort of take it from the movie. Like, I always thought it just existed within the movie, but from what I hear, there was this kind of like late night TV show hosted by a costumed B-movie actor? What do we call the great vampire killer, Peter Vincent? I don't know. It's just there's so much that's about this movie that I'm already like whatever Klempt it is, verklempt, talking about it. This movie is ingrained in my childhood, like most of the movies that we talk about here. I did not see it in the theaters, unfortunately. It was at a time when I was seeing movies in the theaters as a little kid. I think I was probably 6 when this movie came out, but I was also like 2 when E.T. came out, and I saw that in the movies. I don't remember that. I wish I did. That would be a whole different kind of podcast. But this movie in particular, this was sort of the beginning. I'm trying to think of when I actually watched it. I was in grade school, so it was probably like 4th grade maybe. So what is that? 1987-ish, 86, right around the time Lost Boys. Why do I remember Lost Boys being in kindergarten? Oh, because I was 6 in kindergarten. And that would have been around the time Lost Boys came out. So these movies were around well after I was already on the earth, but too young to see movies like this. And I was actually introduced to this movie by my grandmother, may she rest in peace. This is one of the coolest things about my grandma. She used to read sci-fi, and she used to watch horror movies. She was awesome. I called her Grandma Grandson because every time she saw me growing up, she would be like, "Oh, my grandson." And so as a little kid, I just associated the word grandson with that grandma. So she became Grandma Grandson. And my other grandma, when she used to see me as a little kid, "Oh, my little Poopsie." So she became Grandma Poopsie. And then when I had my 2 younger sisters, I educated them that that's Grandma Grandson, that's Grandma Poopsie. Grandma Grandson is the one who used to watch sci-fi movies and used to watch horror movies. She read tons and tons of books throughout her life. I'm pretty sure her imagination inspired an awful lot of my creativity growing up. She used to be able to sit down and just start telling us bedtime stories, and she'd be making these things up like off the top of her head, and we would all be sitting there like enthralled. And if she wasn't making up a bedtime story, she'd be telling us the entire plot of a movie we have yet to see. And for some reason, one night, all right, we're at the 3-minute mark. I can start talking about the movie now. We were trying to go to sleep, and she was like, "Oh, tomorrow we're gonna watch Fright Night." And we were like, "Why? What's Fright Night?" I don't know why vampires were a thing my grandmother was into, and I then at some point, I was really into vampires, probably around the time of Interview with a Vampire. I got really into vampires, but I also remember because this grandson used to live out in Pennsylvania. In Dallas, Pennsylvania. Yes, there's a Dallas in Pennsylvania. I had an art teacher in elementary school who, when we were getting ready for one of the winter breaks, was like, "What's everybody doing on winter break?" And I was like, "I'm going to visit my grandma in Pennsylvania." And she's like, "Where does she live in Pennsylvania?" And I'm like, "Dallas." And she goes, "Dallas? There's no Dallas in Pennsylvania. There's only a Dallas in Texas." Yes, there was a period of time where adults were like morons, but were in charge of things. Oh, wait a minute, that's still now. Anyway. So out in Dallas, Grandma was the first to have cable, and I remember one night seeing the trailer for The Lost Boys because it was going to be on HBO, and even that was a little spooky at the time, but for some reason, maybe it's because she decided to one night tell my sisters and I the entirety of Fright Night. When I finally got around to watching it, it was one of the first horror movies that I was able to kind of get into and not be scared of, although hands down, the night, it was at that period of time, when you're like 8 to 12 and maybe you had a fear of the dark at some point, maybe scary stuff used to give you nightmares and keep you up at night. There would be the kind of thing where, like, all right, as long as I watch the movie during the day, especially it's a vampire movie, if I'm watching it during the day, everything is safe, I'll be okay. But then usually that night, you'll still wind up thinking about these things, and it's just inevitable. And the sequence where Jerry Dandridge is, chasing in 80s horror movie monster fashion, much like Michael Myers, who could just walk and always be like right behind you. I think Jason too, but Jason did actually chase people. He walked with a little bit more gusto and a little bit more purpose. But Jerry Dandridge with that gray leather capey jacket and the red scarf, man, he made it look cool. And he would just, evil's trying to get away. Evil Ed Thompson is played by Stephen Jeffries, and Chris Sarandon as Jerry Dandridge is like running down the alley, because that's what you do, right? When you're trying to casually walk home from your first vampire encounter, let's cut down an alley. Like it is chock full of all the stereotypical movie blunders contrived to put our characters into these situations, and it was the footsteps. You heard the footsteps of Jerry Dandridge. And I remember I'm lying there in bed. The whole day had gone by. We watched Fright Night early, and I'm lying in bed. Now, we didn't watch, it's ironic because we didn't watch Fright Night, even though my grandma said we were going to watch Fright Night the next day. We didn't watch Fright Night. I think because my mom used to drop us off at my grandma's, and we'd be there for a couple days visiting, and then she'd come and pick us up. And maybe when she showed up the next day, she goes, "They're not watching Fright Night. They'll be afraid." So we didn't watch Fright Night. But we knew the whole story, so it didn't matter. When I did finally watch it, we were back at our house in New Jersey, and I was lying in bed, and it was rainy all day. And I think at night there was like water that was dripping from one of the storm gutters, and it was sort of dripping in this rhythm that matched what the footsteps were when Jerry was chasing evil. So that definitely had me unable to sleep. There'll be several movies throughout the course of this adventure we're on here at the 15 Minutes of Movie Memory Madness podcast, which I have not yet said. How did I forget to say that? Oh, yes, I wanted to waste time because of the one negative comment that we got saying nobody cares about what you're talking about for the first 3 minutes. I'm not vindictive. I'm not a vampire. So anyway, yes, that's where we are. That's the show you're listening to, and this is the movie we're talking about, 1985's Fright Night, directed by Tom Holland. No, not Spider-Man. I swear, there was a day, because recently, last year, actually, a novelization of this movie came out, which is awesome, by the way. It's written by Tom Holland and co-written by somebody else. I guess I should know the name. Maybe I'll do some magic Googling in the background here while I continue to talk. But when I shared a picture of the cover on Facebook, because, you know, that's what social media is for. You brag about stuff you're doing. somebody who's like older than me even, who was in one of the audio drama groups I'm in, was like, I've never seen that movie. What is everybody talking about it for? I know it's directed by Spider-Man. And I'm just like, Spider-Man wasn't even a sperm when that movie was made. How could he direct that movie? I'm actually friends with Tom Holland on Facebook, so maybe once I post this, he'll check it out and hear how awesome I think his movie is. This movie became a staple in our household. I don't know how many times we'd seen it. We taped it off cable. We bought it on VHS. I have it on regular DVD. I'm pretty sure I snagged the Blu-ray last year. I also have Fright Night Part 2 on regular DVD. And this movie, it's like parts 1 and 2 are equally awesome. And that's kind of rare in this genre of film. But yeah, it's all due to Grandma. It's all because Grandma told us this nice story about, Charlie is in his room and he's making out with his girlfriend Amy, played by Amanda Bearse, who then would be Marcy on Married with Children for several years. You're going to catch up on some history here, folks. This is how it's going. William Ragsdale playing Charlie, who would then eventually become Herman on Herman's Head. So Fox absorbed some of the stars. And I was actually, I'm trying to think of how many conventions ago it was, but the New Jersey Horror Con had Amanda Bearse was there. And then the following year in the Pennsylvania offshoot, which is now a regular convention, the Pennsylvania Horror Con, run by the same company as the New Jersey Horror Con, had William Ragsdale. And then I think they also had Stephen Jeffries. I'm uber pissed that I didn't go the one year that like everybody was there, including Chris Sarandon. He's on my hit list of people I must meet before the inevitable ending comes, either for him or me, whoever it happens to first. But in any case, yes, the movie that I think perfectly timed and definitely of its time. I'm sure this is the kind of thing, much like when I talked about The Crow last time, how you get past a certain window of people younger than you and they just can't seem to approach some of the subject matter, not because it's like so over their heads, but because the world that's being portrayed doesn't exist anymore. Now, I feel like this didn't happen so much when I was a kid. I had a grandpa who used to watch like all the spaghetti westerns and all the black and white movies from the 20s and 30s, and it wasn't like I was sitting there going like, I can't understand what's going on in this because the world's not like that anymore. Somehow, this anything beyond millennial, you guys are having a tough time out there, and it's unfortunate because to them, they might think that this movie only exists in the version where Colin Farrell is playing Jerry Dandridge, which to its credit, I will say, it has its merits. It's watchable. Chris Sarandon even has a cameo in it, which is nice. I actually felt like there's more spiritual succession, correction, like feeling like it was the right thing, where Chris Sarandon appeared in Bordello of Blood, the Tales from the Crypt movie, the second outing for Tales from the Crypt in the theaters. Wow, I didn't even plan on bringing up Tales from the Crypt, but I had already brought it up. I love these little circular logic moments that you guys get to experience like in real time, just like I do as they're happening off the top of my head. In any case, let's bring it on back. Because I know this movie changed the way I would look out of my windows at night. Not necessarily trying to look into my neighbor's house, but you always kind of, especially if the windows were dark, like if you looked out the window and like the windows across the way were dark, you're kind of like, if I stare long enough, or like a glowing pair of eyes gonna appear really quick, because they only appear for that one quick second at the end of the movie. And Charlie kind of almost misses it. In fact, he does kind of miss it. He writes it off. And I don't think it was the setup for the sequel we got, but it was definitely one of those letting you know, hey, once this movie's over, it's not fully over, there's gonna be more, because there's never just one vampire in the world, guys. I live in the imagination that there are vampires all over the place out there. More like Interview. Like, I'm that guy waiting to have the one that comes to me and says, hey dude, you do that awesome podcast about the movies from the last 20, 30 years. I want to tell you my story of how I was born into darkness. What a cool genre. In any case, so yes, this is the movie about a kid who is making out with his girlfriend. She actually finally, that sounded terrible. I apologize out there. I was not sensitive at all. But in the 80s, this was a trope where it was like the young couple, both kind of on the verge of losing their virginity, but obviously it was always the guys who were like gung-ho, we need to figure this out. This has to happen because we're not cool until we do that. So they're in his bedroom, they're making out, they're watching Fright Night, the local horror serial show, and he just gets up. I guess he was getting up to close the curtains, and he happens to casually look out the window, and the people moving into the house next door are moving coffins into the basement. See, now, these days, there would be footage filmed on a phone and uploaded to YouTube with what the hell's going on? Smash the like and subscribe button for more crazy shit from my neighbor's house. Back in these days, it was just, wow, this dude had a pair of binoculars. What a perv. But yeah, he suddenly is like, enraptured with the fact that there is a coffin being moved in next door. And it's weird because it's sort of like his girlfriend who decided that, okay, I will go through with this. Tonight will be the night we have sex. Feels very rejected by the fact that the dude who was just all over her, and there was also like the Charlie stop it. I forgot about the Charlie stop it. He's like trying to slide his hand up her shirt, and she goes, Charlie, stop it. And then he does it again, and she's like, Charlie, I said stop it. And then he goes, yeah, we've been going together for months, and all I've ever heard is Charlie, stop it. There's our case. It's cringe. I'm cringing saying this. There's cringiness, but this is what growing up is, man. Before Blink-182 said it, this is what it was. This is what we used to see on TV. This is what we used to see in movies. It's always that awkwardness of trying to figure it out. And then I think it's a pretty valid distraction to be seeing coffins being moved in next door for you to suddenly be like, whoa, what? I think that's a pretty justified, like, yeah, we're not doing that tonight. But she gets pissed. Real pissed. And she storms out, and he goes chasing after her, and his mom, who's downstairs reading, I don't know, some magazine, while also watching TV, and she kind of, she knew what they were doing upstairs, and I guess she's on board with it, because she's like, are you two having a little lover's quarrel? Kind of, I think she calls it a lover's spat, which I never heard that in real life. I only heard that in movies. This is a very long, like, sort of focus on the opening sequence here. I don't know why. It's sort of like, the coffin thing. And I remember, I don't know, there's just something about, too, the way, like, my grandma told us this. It's like, so he sees the coffins, and then his mom says, oh, yeah, they finally sold the house next door, and it's these two guys moving in, and my grandma instantly, she goes, so, one of them's a vampire, and the other's his drone. You didn't even, like, let the suspense kick in, Grandma. You just went right to make sure we understood the context. And it's like, even though she would gloss over it, she did even mention, like, oh, yeah, there's prostitutes that are being, that, like, the next day when Charlie comes home from school, this prostitute gets out of a cab, and she thinks that Charlie's the one who called her, and he goes, oh, no, you're looking for the house next door. And then that night, he hears the scream from the open window across the way there, and now he's sort of like, what's going on? Because all of a sudden there's kind of like if you kind of pay attention, back in the day, I don't know that, at least when I watched this movie, I wasn't as adept at picking up the background dialogue or paying attention so much, like, unless the camera was directly on the thing saying pay attention to this. You would miss some of these little kind of world building background kind of things, but there's a news, even when Charlie's still talking to his mom after Amy leaves, there's a news report that this body was found beheaded at the train station in town. And then the next day, when they're at school, like, first Charlie and Amy are kind of chatting, and she actually, like, the whole joke, the gimmick was that she was coming over to help him with his trigonometry homework, and so he's kind of, like, really mired in trying to actually do the studying he was supposed to do that night. She sits down, they're kind of making up and all cutesy, and then he's distracted yet again, because on the TV, there's the picture saying this person's missing, or this person was found murdered, and it's the prostitute who showed up at the house next door, who he heard scream. And so now Amy's all pissed again, but all of a sudden here comes Evil Ed, who's his good friend from school, and he's like, yeah, that's not all I heard, I've got the police scanner. He said, that's not the only murder we've had recently, it's the second one in 2 days, and get this, both of them had their heads chopped off, which, in the days just before Highlander, that was one of the ways to make sure a vampire stayed dead, or somebody that was bitten by a vampire didn't fully become a vampire. So, yeah. Oh, man. And so, the mystery begins. Charlie's on the mission to decide to stay up. And this is the first movie. It's funny because I didn't really realize it. There's kind of things that you, I guess, don't stick in your mind as, like, objectionable or something. Like, I mean, the movie was rated R, or maybe it was PG-13. It was actually PG-13, even though there's a couple brief moments of nudity, and this is one of them, because that night Charlie decides, I'm going to stay up, I've got the binoculars, I've got snacks, I'm going to wait and just watch next door and see what happens. And wouldn't you know it, middle of the night, after he's already fallen asleep, we've got static on the TV, because I know we're in the streaming world, so people probably don't even realize this now, but there was a point in time where the programming day, the broadcast day, would end and the TV would just be static for several hours until the morning, when the programming would pick up again with the news. And so to let everybody know that it's the middle of the night, TV static used to be the thing. So the static on the TV, Charlie fell asleep, and he randomly wakes up. And there they are. This brunette is, like, taking off her shirt, and there's a dude standing behind her. His shirt's already off, and it's like the cool, slow, seductive music. Why can't I remember who did this song? Because I remember in the days of Napster, and then we also had Kazaa, and there was another one that was sort of between the two that I used to download music from, and it was like trying to find Come to Me, the theme from what's it called, Fright Night, was difficult. It was hard to find a version that wasn't that one that somebody just recorded it off their TV, so it would also have movie sound effects and movie dialogue stuck in there. Eventually found it. Man, I will Google this too while I'm talking to you guys. That's what we do. This is the magic we didn't have at the time that this movie takes place. Anyway, so yes, Charlie blatantly witnesses the vampire about to murder somebody. And the only problem is, because he's he's kind of inept, I guess, in this way. He might as well have screamed out, like, cool boobies, because yes, the girl takes her shirt off. The gratuitous nudity of a 80s horror movie was fully in play, and he's just kind of like watching with the binoculars, because it's like, yes, this is awesome. And then, like, I guess it's like he hears him telepathically. The vampire kind of goes, wait a minute, what's going on here? Somebody's watching. And he looks directly across at him. And so this very iconic moment in this movie is when he kind of comes from behind the woman, walks over to the window, like blatantly stares back at Charlie, and then reaches up with his hand to pull the window shade down, and his fingers are all elongated into claw, but like they still look like a human hand, but just with longer, thin fingers with all like very long, sharpened nails at the end. And Charlie's like, holy shit, I know what this is. And so he runs downstairs to tell his mom, like, that they're killing somebody next door, and like this all happens pretty fast because he runs downstairs, he runs out without saying anything to his mom. She's sitting on the couch and she's like, "Where are you going?" He runs outside and hides in the bushes, and all of a sudden there's the dude. The drone is carrying a garbage bag with a body in it. I mean, it's the body's size and shaped bag, and putting it in the back of a Jeep. And all of a sudden we get this really cool perspective shot of first like somebody walking off the roof of the house next door and then flying over, and it flies right over the bushes that Charlie's hiding in. And he goes, "Hey, you forgot something." And he throws her the purse. Brad Fidel, by the way. Come to Me by Brad Fidel. How did I forget this? Oh, man, you would think after all the effort I went through to get that, it would be ingrained in my mind. I'll never forget it again now because I'm slightly embarrassed that I did it live. This is probably more dialogue nobody cares about. In any case, and while he's hiding, of course, Mom comes to the door and starts calling out for him. Charlie, and the vampire turns, and he's like eating an apple. This becomes a thing throughout the movie, and he eats it just like straight through the core, which we all know that would kill a normal person, but I guess when arsenic isn't a problem for you, you just eat the entire apple. You don't like to waste food. And it's interesting because there's a vampire who needs to drink blood but still eats food, right? That's the kind of vampire I want to be. if like one of the, I think the fascinations I always had with the vampire genre is like, oh man, living forever, that's gonna be awesome. I'm gonna get to see the future and shit. But you know, if you're an Anne Rice vampire, you don't eat food. You know, I think there's sometimes some vampire movies, like I don't know if anybody out there has seen the movie of What We Do in the Shadows. I've only seen a few episodes of the show, but for me, being a purist at times, you gotta see the movie first, and the movie made sure to point out what happens if as a vampire you eat food. It does not go well. And so but this was kind of like best of both worlds. You live forever, you have to drink the blood to live forever, but you could still eat food and like probably have sex. I don't know. They don't really, I mean, they kind of imply, but they don't really show it. They don't go to the lengths to show it. In the Rice world, in the vampire, in the books of Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles, they kind of like go to great lengths to let you know you basically, you don't eat food, you don't have sex. Like drinking the blood is the equivalent of the pleasure you would have gotten from sex nowadays in the Anne Rice world, but not so much in Tom Holland's world of Fright Night. The things you think about even as a little kid watching this movie. And thus begins the sort of cat and mouse. Does he know? Does he not know? I mean, Charlie even goes and brings the police. Like, what do you think the police are gonna do, dude? Why would you do this? And yeah, I think that's the sort of like weird cautionary tale, suburban cautionary tale. Don't go to Dracula's castle looking to start shit. And then of course, as this whole sort of the police don't believe him, the vampire comes and tries to give him the choice, you know, the Lestat, right? He goes, I'm going to give you the choice I don't have, you know. And I kind of, to his credit, I kind of, this is one of the reasons I love Jerry Dandridge as a character. And I really thought, you know, one movie's definitely not enough in my mind. I feel like it would be cool. I would love a prequel where we see Jerry become the vampire, which is ironic because these are some of the things, the embellishments and additions for anybody who loves this movie and who grew up with this movie and who saw this movie. I actually really highly recommend the novelization that came out because it kind of expands the lore, it expands the story. We do see some of Jerry's past, and it's actually pretty well done, and it's not a super long book. And, spoiler alert, it sets up a sequel. There are some major changes that come at the end of the book, so for anyone who's seen the movie, when you get to these parts, you're like, wait a minute, that's not what happened. And it full-on sets up, and apparently the book is the first in what is a planned trilogy of novels. So we can stay tuned, more to come on that front. it was definitely one of the things, like, as soon as I was done reading it, I was like, fuck, I want to write a book. So, you know, who knows? you may see something on its way. But, yeah, Jerry Dandridge is like a cool vampire because he's got all the powers. He's got the telepathy. I mean, in fact, one of the things that the book explains about some of these scenes, like the woman when Charlie's watching the woman just kind of undressing in front of the window, and she's kind of just staying there. She's gonna let Jerry Dandridge bite her. He's got this thrall that he puts people in, like it's a charm. It's like a special power that, like, they're kind of in this hypnotic daze around him. And we do see some of that later in the movie because, of course, you know, it has to come to pass. I'll get there. We'll put a pin in that for now because, you know, he shows up. Charlie goes to the police. The police don't believe him. After he does get the police to come to the house, and Jerry's drone, or AKA his daytime protector, who they kind of explain in the book too what his deal is, where he's like, he's not full vampire. He's sort of like kept, what's it called? He's kept artificially elongated life because he's been able to drink some of the vampire's blood, but he's not fully, like, he hasn't been drained and then had his blood replenished by the vampire's blood, so he's not full. But he's kind of like his daytime protector. He's known, I mean, they've known each other for hundreds of years. He's been alive for almost as long as Jerry has, played by 80s character actor Jonathan Stark, Billy Cole here. He can walk around during the day, so he kind of takes care of the maintenance of the house and painting, blacking out the windows in the basement because that's where the coffins are. So, you know, he answers the door when the cops show up, and Charlie's trying to say they had the girl here last night who got murdered. And he took the body out in trash bags, and, you know, all this kind of stupid stuff. Why would you do this? Why would you go to the cops without any actual proof in hand? And so, of course, now the cops don't believe him, and now Billy knows that Charlie knows, so he's obviously going to tell Jerry. So, who does he turn to? He goes to his friend Evil Ed, who's like the resident expert on all things horror, and he's, you know, giving him the rundown. He goes, well, you know, you could use garlic, you could use crosses. He gives him a cross. He says, you know, get a couple pieces of wood and make some stakes. You know, you got to stake him in the heart if he comes after you. That's the only way to fight him. He goes, but the best protection you have right now, Charles, and this is something that we do see echoed in other vampire movies, in particular The Lost Boys, and also on True Blood. In fact, in True Blood, they took it to the next level. Obviously, Charmaine Harris had seen Fright Night and Lost Boys before she wrote those books. And in that show, you can rescind the invitation, and the vampire has to immediately back out of your house. There was a sequence I thought that was kind of hokey where she rescinded the vampire's invitations and they had to immediately walk backwards and get out of the house. It's like, come on. So, you know, Charlie has got this renewed sense of confidence because, you know, Evil tells him the only way a vampire can enter your home is if they're invited in by the rightful owner first. And, you know, I think this was the scene that was why my grandma wanted to tell my sisters and I about it, because she thought it was hilarious that, like, Charlie goes home, he's nailing his windows shut, he's got his cross, he's feeling like, okay, I'm good, he can't come in the house, and he comes down all happy-go-lucky, he's even whistling, and the mom's going, Charlie, come in here for a minute, and he's like, yeah, Mom, and she goes, I want you to meet our next-door neighbor, Jerry Dandridge, and then there he is, sitting in the chair, you know, he's just got his kind of hand on the head, the side of the headrest, kind of just tapping his fingers, and then he just comes and leans out and he goes, hi, Charlie, and, you know, he stands up and Charlie's kind of frozen in place because, like, how the hell is this happening? And the mom's just like, I invited him over for a drink. And he immediately goes, you what? I invited him over. And then Jerry's like, yeah, you know, now that I've been made welcome, I'm sure I'll be stopping by quite a bit. In fact, whenever I feel like it. With your mom's kind permission, of course. He was like super Rico Suave, man. And especially to, you know, Charlie's mom's a single mom. She's obviously on the market. She's hunting a little bit. We don't know why. They never really talk about what happened in the movie. In the book, we get a little bit of background on what happened, and it's actually that Charlie's dad passed away. So we're not even playing in the pool of child of divorce and divorcee and all kinds of weirdness. But she has got a little bit of that sort of like, you could see her as like a town gossip type. And so she's all thinking, yo, Jerry is coming on to me hard in front of my kid, and I am here for it. Sploosh. But of course, that's not really the case. What's really happening is he's going to stop by later that night and have a little chat with Charlie. And he does the thing, like he first shows up in the mom's room, makes sure the mom's asleep, and then he kind of does the thing where he pulls the door closed so deep, like it breaks the trim of the door frame and jams shut, so she is not going to be able to interrupt. And he kind of ambushes Charlie in his room and gives him that whole like, forget about me and I'll forget about you. And to me, the movie could have ended right there. I think there's probably a lot of us watching that movie at that point going, yeah, dude, how fucking awesome would it be to have a friend as have a vampire as a friend? I'm sure, like, in the world of Buffy, right? Because that was another movie that kind of came out. Maybe, like the 80s and into the 90s was kind of like vampires were the thing. We've even had Vampire Diaries and the originals, now that I think about it. So vampires have been part of the popular culture zeitgeist for quite some time. In fact, I had a chance to meet Sebastian Roche in Chicago in 2015 at C2E2, and the way I Jerry Dandridged my way into the interview by like walking past his table, waving, and when he noticed and he waved back, I said, "Hey man, you're looking really original," and he goes, "Oh, that's brilliant," and that was it. That opened the door. And even at that time, I was like, "Yeah, man, vampires are like the thing," and yeah, dude, now I'm really pissed. I really wish I got a chance to meet Chris Sarandon. I got to make that happen. I even met, Cheryl Lee, who plays Laura Palmer in Twin Peaks, which is not a vampire story, but she's also a key component of John Carpenter's Vampires. There's another one, John Carpenter, the man who made Halloween, who we've already mentioned on the show with the way that Michael Myers can walk and always be behind you, gets into the game with the vampire. I think everybody has like a checklist if they're making movies and making horror movies, and it's like, all right, have you done a vampire movie yet? No. Okay, it's time to do John Carpenter's Vampires starring James Woods. This is kind of like a vampire free-for-all up in here. But anyway, Charlie, I feel like, much like the interviewer character in Interview with the Vampire, I would have gone that route. Like, as soon as I realized what was going on, like, first of all, this dude's got hot prostitutes showing up all the time. I'm going to suddenly be in this whole new class of people hanging out in the neighborhood. Dude's pretty damn cool. I mean, he's got special powers, obviously, so the charm is working there. But, like, forget about me and I'll forget about you. I'll be like, okay, how about this? How about, let's amend that idea. I'll forget about you. I won't tell anybody else about you. You promise not to, like, murder me. My best friend is a vampire. Another movie. When you think about it, everybody wants to be Ralph. Everybody wants the best friend as the vampire because he could, like, hypnotize people and get you dates and stuff. But I won't tell people about you. But, like, can we be cool? Like, let's flip the script here. Let's change the course. I don't need to be the sort of all-American, goody-goody. You could show me a few things. It would be cool to have a vampire who'd had my back, Think of that would be an interesting, if we did like Fright Night as a streaming service show, where it could start out the same. Kid notices vampire move in next door, but instead of like, as at this moment, everything's the same up until this point. You told a bunch of people about you, tried to get the cops to come over. You come over and like level with me, and I'm like, dude, you're right. What do I give a shit? You've obviously been around for hundreds of years. This is obviously part of the world. Who am I to judge? Who am I to put my stamp of approval or disapproval on this? But let's throw some ground rules. I'll keep your secret. You get my back. I'm not saying that in a blackmail kind of way either. I'm saying, look, I think it's pretty badass that I'm going to be friends with somebody who's got hundreds of years worth of antique shit in their house. You could teach me how to fence, I'm sure. And then maybe maybe, let's just say, maybe down the road, we become such cool friends that you either make me a drone like this dude so I can still walk around in the daylight, but I'm living forever and I'm hard to kill, as we find later in the movie, or fuck it, make me a full-blown vampire, dude. I can't tell you for how many years it was really solidified after Interview with the Vampire that I was like, fuck, I want to be a vampire. Like, if I met a vampire, like, just like the interviewer, if I met one, I'd be like, sir, okay, what do we got to do here? I don't want to just be food. How do I join the club? All right, this is like getting led into the Illuminati, man. I want in. I won't worry about a damn thing. I won't even care about paying off my credit cards after this. I want in. But of course, Charlie doesn't do this. Charlie, for some reason, thinks he's going to be able to fight this monster that's hundreds of years old. And when he, instead of just saying sure, he pulls the cross that Ed gave him out of his pocket and tries to kind of use the cross, and that just pisses this guy off. And that's what we hear multiple times throughout the movie. You have to have faith for that to work on me. So we've already disarmed the idea of a cross just being a weapon. You have to actually believe. And maybe meeting a vampire would make you believe, because if you're on the fence in the world of spirituality and then something like this confirms to you that supernatural shit is real, it might kind of unlock all kinds of doors for you, you know? In fact, we see that happen later in the movie. So Charlie is, I don't know, so this is the part too where even this part, like the vampire could have crushed his throat, could have like just murdered him, but instead he wants to kind of make it look like Charlie jumped out the window. I guess he's kind of staging it like a suicide because he just moved. You know, this is a guy who's been around for hundreds of years and he just got to town. It's like, fucker, we still haven't even finished painting the walls in the new place. I'm not even unpacked yet. You know, and they never really give, like, he doesn't give a cover for like what he does for a living, but people just assume he's either independently wealthy or something. But like, yeah, you know, there's the practicality, and they do talk about that in the book. I don't mean to be so like, oh, in the book they say this, but in the book they say this. And so he talks about like, yeah, you know, we just got here. Like Billy's even saying something, because they actually show you in the book how that first body that's mentioned on the news becomes a dead body. And it was this guy who, it was the guy at the train station who was in charge of receiving the coffin that was being shipped via train, and is sort of intimating that he's going to blackmail them about the fact that they have a coffin being delivered, and that it's obviously a very old coffin, and you know, something's up with it. So Jerry kills his ass. The book is cool. The book is really, really cool. It's like, it adds like a few more dimensions. The movie did not feel incomplete, even for the short running time it's got, and for the time period it came out, where movies didn't delve as deep as they are. There wasn't as much demand for things to be more than sort of just surface level. You're supposed to have a few kind of like tentpole standout scenes, but for the most part, like, we get it. Like, I don't think anybody watching this movie is going, what the fuck does Jerry do for a living? How do people not know? Like, you know, how do people not figure out that he's a vampire? In fact, in my travels in the circles of horror and comic conventions, I've gotten actually a little bit close to the crowd of The Lost Boys. I was doing some music video work for the guy who did the theme song to that movie, and at one of the conventions I actually got to meet Jason Patric, and they were on a panel. It was him, Tom Mack, the guy who did the song, Billy Worth, who plays Dwayne the vampire in The Lost Boys. He's the one who gets shot into the stereo, the death by stereo vampire. And Jameson Newlander, who was the Frog Brother, who was not Corey Feldman. And they were all up on this panel talking about The Lost Boys, and how, if you really look at the movie, you know, Richard Donner produced it and Joel Schumacher directed it, and it worked because it took itself seriously enough. And then Jason Patric says this, and this is why I'm bringing it up in a Fright Night podcast, because he goes, you know, because if you don't do it seriously, then you get Fright Night, and I'm telling you, Lost Boys is the better movie. And I was like, holy shit, dude. First of all, it's been decades. Are we really trying to say that there's like a Fright Night Lost Boys rivalry? I thought they all kind of just lived and got along together. in the same realm of stories and movies about vampires. In fact, I, without even thinking about how probably, like, thank God I didn't say it to Jason, but I said it to G. I was like, I've often thought that would have been a cool crossover opportunity there, where, like, maybe you see the Lost Boys, like, meet Jerry Dandridge because Max was friends with them. Max, who turns out to be the head vampire in the Lost Boys. He's age appropriate. We don't even know his history, really. We don't know how long he was a vampire in that movie. It would have been neat that, like, if Max and Jerry knew each other, and then Max introduced Jerry to his Lost Boys, like, hey, yeah, these are the kids that I turned into this is my little coven of vampires here out in Santa Carla, so if you're ever in town, let us know, we'll make sure we'll do something cool. I don't know, I just thought it'd be interesting sandbox to play in. They do a lot of the implication of Jerry having a little bit more of, like, a refined history, and the book does kind of delve into sort of some of that, like, he was definitely aristocratic, but what really winds up happening, so, like, Charlie survives because he stabs Jerry in the hand with a pencil, and we see Jerry transform into closer to his true form, which isn't a charming, good-looking guy. It's more of like a ghoulish-looking monster, and he's going to kill Charlie, but we hear Charlie's mom wake up, and when you think about it, why would this stop him? This is like, I think when I was watching this, kind of like The Crow, watching it with younger eyes, you just kind of like, oh yeah, it all makes sense. But watching it now, going, well, dude, if you're an all-powerful vampire, just kill everybody, kill everyone in the fucking house and burn it to the ground. Why? But no, the mom woke up, and he doesn't want to kill Charlie because the mom is awake now. And he even said to Charlie, he goes, we don't want to wake your mom now because then I'd have to kill her too. But then she wakes up and he's like, oh fuck, I guess I'm not killing anybody. And he leaves Charlie alive. And it's kind of like, Saved by the Bell in a way. But Jerry makes sure to call Charlie right after he gets back to the house. And, Charlie's mom wakes up. She somehow finally gets her door open, and they run into each other, and he's just like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Mom, I was having a nightmare. I'm sorry I woke you up. And she goes, oh, do you want a Valium? Do you want some hot cocoa? And he goes, no, I'm fine. And they hear this, like, loud crash outside. And she's like, what was that? He goes, oh, it's probably just raccoons in the garbage can. It was Jerry doing something, right? Then Jerry calls Charlie, and he's like, I just destroyed your car. And you're kind of like, fuck, man. Like, that hurt me. I felt like, because I'm somebody who definitely experienced car troubles a lot. All the cars that I had owned before the one that I bought brand new definitely broke down. So I know what it's like to be without a car. And that's kind of like the opening gambit of like, all right, now I'm fucking serious, kid. I'm going to nail you tomorrow night. It was like, there's nothing compared to what I'm going to do to you tomorrow night. And in an act of desperation, and also because as that phone call ends, they even did the really cool thing. He's like, hi, Charlie, I know you're there. I'm looking at you right now. And then Charlie turns and Jerry's in the room looking across through the window. Cool stuff, man. I don't know. I don't know how to describe why. It just worked. It just worked. And of course, I always look at the 80s and the 90s too. The 90s are kind of the ultimate peak, but the 80s and probably the 70s were when movies were really kind of finding their footing. And like kind of in the 80s, it was like we found this nice smooth patch where like sometimes the effects looked fake, but it still felt real in the context of the whole movie, and I'm not talking about this movie in particular, I'm talking about movies in general. And so, these kind of little simple story contrivances, they worked, okay, of course, they're going to walk down the dark alley, and that's how the vampire is going to get one of them. All right, fine. So, he says, see you tomorrow night, pulls the shade down, hangs up, and as that happens, Charlie's looking at the TV, and Peter Vincent, the great vampire killer, is killing vampires on TV. Peter Vincent, who happens to also host the show that also happens to be shot just, like, not far away from where Charlie lives, so Charlie can actually go to the TV station to try to enlist the help of Peter Vincent, the great vampire killer, who, as luck would have it, just got fired from Fright Night because, apparently vampires are waning in popularity in this world of the movie. And so, he doesn't believe Charlie. And, I'm trying to remember the way my grandma told all this whole story. And she told it all to us in, half an hour, which is nuts. I've already well exceeded that. But I'm Mr. Tangential. I'm Mr. Extra stories kind of thing. The whole reason you do a podcast, right? The whole reason for this kind of show existing. So eventually we got to get to the point where, Charlie's friends, his girlfriend, his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Amy, and his buddy, Evil Ed, both who've noticed Charlie acting really weird, go to his house. They see that he's, got candles all over the room and garlic hanging from the windows, and he's making steaks, and he's got crosses everywhere. And they're both like, holy shit, our friend has lost his mind. And Amy even comes up with the idea, well, you're going to need help if you're going to fight a vampire. Maybe like Peter Vincent. And he goes, I already tried him and he doesn't believe me. And then they go see Peter Vincent and offer him money. And Peter Vincent is about to be evicted from his apartment. So, of course, this is all happening at just the right time for everybody to get pulled together to become sort of like a Scooby-Doo team to go fight the vampire. And they call Jerry and propose this idea, hey, listen, our friend's kind of losing his mind. We want to help this situation. We'll come over and perform some kind of test on you to prove that you're not, because they don't believe he's a vampire. So they're like, how about, we come over and you hold a cross or something. And he goes, now crosses are out of the question. I'm a reborn Christian. I believe that would be sacrilegious. And they say, well, what about holy water? And then they actually... They set the thing up. Peter Vincent's like, just tell him it's tap water. All he'll have to do is sip it. They're going to go do this thing. They go do the test. Charlie goes. Peter, Amy, Evil, they all go. Billy Cole's there. He drinks the water. Nothing happens to him. So everyone's like, all right, Charlie, do you now believe that I'm not a vampire? And in the course of them at the house... Charlie happens to find a painting that looks like it's of Amy, but it's obviously of somebody from hundreds of years ago, because it's in a crate with all kinds of, sawdust and packing material. And of course, when Jerry meets Amy, there's kind of a thing. And in the book, they actually talk about how she immediately feels like she's under the sort of hypnosis, and she's finding him super charming and dreamy. And I remember I introduced this movie to a group of friends in college my freshman year. It used to be the girl that I was dating had a group of friends, girls that she was friends with, and another one of my friends started dating one of them. So we would have these Sunday night movie nights, and I was like, we gotta rent Fright Night if you guys have never seen it. And in the scene where we've already so there's this whole thing where Jerry chases them to the club. After, Peter at this test thing pulls out this cigarette case that he introduced earlier in the movie, showed it to Amy and Evil, and it was a prop from one of his movies. And that's how he knew that a guy in the movie was a vampire. He looked in his mirror and the guy didn't have a reflection. There's a little mirror inside the cigarette case. So after Jerry did the whole fake test and he's talking to Amy and Ed and Charlie, who is William Ragsdale, he does that. He kind of walks off to the side, pulls out the thing, and he looks in the mirror and he notices that Jerry doesn't have a reflection, and now he's freaked out because holy shit, this kid wasn't lying. And when he drives off all horrified, Charlie realizes that Peter realizes it, and he tries to tell Amy and Ed this is fucking bad. So they're all gonna walk Amy home. And this is where Evil veers off and goes down the alleyway, because why the hell would you not? And so after they get Evil, after Evil's been got, now Charlie and Amy are being chased. And the only place they can get to is this dance club, which somehow, they didn't cut, they tried to get in line, there were too many people in line, so they went around the side, they broke in through the kitchen window, and Charlie's trying to call the police don't want to come because they already think Charlie's nuts, and we have this whole really crazy dance sequence, because all of a sudden from out of the crowd there's Jerry. charmed his way into the club. He calls Amy to him, and she's dancing with him, and like at first she's just kind of in the hypnotism, and she's like into the charm, and then there's this sequence where she's holding on to him, and like there's an entire wall of the club that's mirrors, and she's dancing, and when she looks in the mirror, she's dancing by herself, but when she looks like right in front of her, there's Jerry. So now she realizes, like, holy shit, this whole time, it's always like there's that moment where a little bit of vindication for the underdog, where it's like everybody realizes you were telling the truth. Holy shit, now we're gonna have to go kill this vampire. And so, you know, at the end of this sequence, they wind up getting Amy, and they take her back to the house. And while Charlie is trying to convince Peter Vincent to help him, Peter, who has an altercation with Evil. Oh my God, I feel like there's so much I'm trying to cram in here. This isn't a movie recap podcast. I just feel like I need to at least get us to this scene so that I could talk about what happened when I was watching it with a bunch of girls in college, because all of a sudden Amy wakes up and she's in like this, like, you know, pristine white dress, and she's in a seduction room in the house, because it's like, you know, fur carpets and stuff, and there's a roaring fire in the fireplace, and Jerry has the cassette of Come to Me, the instrumental theme of the song of the movie by Brad Fiedel, and he puts it on, and she looks up, and on the wall is the painting of the woman who looks exactly like her. Now in the book, they introduce this concept of that there are actually like reincarnated souls. There are people who pass on and then are born again generations later, and it's literally actually the same. It's supposed to be like the same person filtered, but kind of like what was that, Cloud Atlas by the Wachowskis. And so, you know, there's a throwaway line after the kids all leave where Billy says, wow, she looks just like her. And Jerry goes, yeah. And so you kind of know there's something there. And he walks in, his shirt is unbuttoned and hanging on him, and then he kind of just takes it off. And I remember we're watching this in college, and this one chick, Taylor, who I thought was one of the hotter ones in this group, you know, which is horrible of me to admit that there was another girl in the group that I was like, yo, if I wasn't already with you, I would definitely be trying to get with her. But Taylor just like was enthralled, and like he drops his shirt and Taylor just goes, whoa. And I was just like, yup, this is why I want to be a vampire. That moment right there, the Taylor whoa. And so then of course the whole rest of the movie becomes like a race against time, because Evil's been turned into a vampire. They've got Amy. If they can't get Amy back, they'll never see her again. They actually do wind up like doing the assault on Jerry's house, and when they find Amy, she's already been bit. You know, he does bite her in the seduction scene, and so she's kind of partway transformed, and now they have to kill Jerry before the sun comes up, otherwise Amy will be a vampire forever. And then it gets really like out of hand. Like Amy as a vampire, like her whole mouth, it becomes kind of like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, like how huge her mouth full of fangs is. We see Jerry turn into a bat during the battle. We find out that Billy Cole can be killed with a stake through the heart, but he doesn't die like a normal vampire. He starts melting into green goo. It's a lot of cool stuff once it kind of takes the final turn. Like in the final act, it's a little bit of an action horror movie. But in any case, yeah, Fright Night, I can't imagine movie fandom without Fright Night being in there. I'm kind of perturbed. I'm a little shocked at how pissed Jason Patric was. I guess I'll have to do a Lost Boys episode at some point, but yeah, man, Fright Night definitely was a big deal in my house, and I'm hoping that anyone who hadn't seen it, who can, you know, find it now. I don't think it's streaming anywhere right now, but it definitely came out on Blu-ray last year, and it's worth giving it a whirl. And if you can put yourself, it's a nostalgia bomb. I love how much it will transport me back to the world at the time that I saw this, and the world at the time that the movie takes place, a world I often miss. And yeah, at this point I've been blathering on about it for an hour, and we all have to get back to work. So I think we're going to wrap this up like somebody breaking the blacked out windows of the vampire's basement so the sunlight can stream in and blow the motherfucker away. Spoiler alert, you've had time. In any case, yes, I love Fright Night. Fright Night is an awesome movie. Incredible, awesome performance by Chris Sarandon, Prince Humperdinck from The Princess Bride. These were the two movies that I knew him from. It was Fright Night and Princess Bride. It's kind of like Tim Curry, right? You had like Clue and It, or Legend as well. So you had like a little bit of variety for all these folks. In any case, this has been fun. I gotta get back to my desk before my boss kills me, and I will see you all next time at the movies, or when we rent a movie, or whatever it is, whatever you call it now. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Hollow9ine Network, bringing you the very best in fan-made media. That's the word hollow, the number 9, I-N-E. Find the Hollow9ine Network on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. Rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Email us at hollow9podcast@gmail.com. Leave us your feedback. Join in the conversation and be a part of the action. Join in the fun. Hollow9ine.